Open for views.
Hey, and welcome to Open for Views. Today, let's talk about Hermeticism. How do you explain Hermeticism to someone who has no idea what it is you're even talking about? Well, first, we'll establish the father of Hermeticism, which is Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice the greatest, as the name implies. Hermes was supposedly an Egyptian fellow, the Egyptian god Thoth, to be exact, combined with the Greek messenger god Hermes. He wrote, or rather didn't write, clanked on some stone tablets, some emerald, many a tome of philosophical and spiritual knowledge. The most well-known is Corpus Hermeticum, which that's basically what these two are, the Way of Hermes and the Hermetica. We'll get more about that, get to that later. But Hermeticism was developing in right at the turn between BC and AD. There's theories that it goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's oral. It's an oral tradition, oral history passed on by the Egyptians. Others place it closer to that era, anywhere from the modern estimates are anywhere between 500 BC and about 1 or 200 AD. Or as I was about to say earlier, Hermeticism was kind of developing in tandem with very early Christianity and Gnosticism, and it just kind of went away, just faded away. No one really talked about it. Not until the Renaissance, when some Hermetic texts were discovered and basically translated and shown to people, and they were very impressed by this because at the time they thought these were the oldest historical records. It's the Egyptians. They built the pyramids. The oldest essentially historical record of creation. And it wasn't until during the Renaissance that a Swiss philologist came along, and a philologist, by the way, for people who don't know, is essentially a person who studies literary texts to validate their authenticity, study the language. And so this philologist came along and said, this is actually from about 300 AD. And everybody in the era was pretty bummed out about that. And it didn't occur to many years later that it was rediscovered. I believe in the mid-1940s via the Nag Hamadi library, which is the Nag Hamadi library has some Hermetic texts in it. It has some apocryphal books from the Holy Bible. Nag Hamadi will blow your hair back. That's a wild, wild book. But it was found to be authentic. The Hermetic text, Hermes Trismegistus, not necessarily it was written by Thoth. No one to this day, no one really knows who Hermes Trismegistus actually was. I'm of the belief that it was a council. It was a literary council who compiled oral history, probably collected it from a bunch of different areas in the region, and made the Corpus Hermeticum. among other works. Hermeticism is essentially as I mentioned before, a philosophical, spiritualist, fact-gathering text. But the aim of the book, of Corpus Hermeticum in particular, is to have the knowledge, bear with me here, to have the knowledge to be able to armor your soul, to be able to transcend into the heavens, travel across the cosmos, and go to its particular paradise. And it will go there, it will be judged and placed with like souls. And if not placed with like souls, it will be cast down into the stormy torrent in between space and earth. So you were eternally tortured, seeing what you're missing out on. So the first thing I read was the Hermetica, because I heard Terence McKenna. I mentioned him a few times. Really interesting cat. I heard Terence McKenna refer to the Corpus Hermeticum. What's he talking about? So I looked it up, and I found the only one that was available to me at the time, which was the Hermetica, The Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs by Timothy Frake and Peter Gandy, which is this right here. And so these are my little important parts. This version is essentially a Frankenstein edition of Corpus Hermeticum. They've taken things from other works known as Asclepius, other works known as the Definitions, and combined them into essentially like books. And there's a little bit of, I don't like this, right before the bits of text, every single one, they tell you what they think it means. I don't need you to tell me. Let the person reading it decide. But which I find interesting, because the book also says, don't tell anyone about this. Let them discover it for themselves. But I'm not going to read much of this. I'm just going to, pick through some things. I said it, I'm going to pick through some things in here that I find interesting. And things that I think will be entertaining for the channel. You can also find different translations. This is The Way of Hermes by Clement Salomon, Doreen Van Oven, William D. Wharton, and Jean-Pierre May, which that's excellent. But that's a translation. I can't remember. It's either the Greek or the Latin, where it's essentially a teacher talking to a student, dictating the message. So the first thing in this, the first bit of text that you actually get that is from the works of Hermes Trismegistus, is him literally begging history not to allow the Greeks to translate Corpus Hermeticum. So let me read this, because I find it quite humorous. My teachings will seem more obscure in times to come, when they are translated from our Egyptian mother tongue into that of the Greeks. Translation will distort much of their meaning. Expressed in our native language, the teachings are clear and simple, for the very sound of an Egyptian word resonates with the thing signified by it. All possible measures should be taken to prevent these holy secrets being corrupted by translation into Greek, which is an arrogant, feeble, showy language, unable to contain the cogent force of my words. The Greek language lacks the power to convince, and Greek philosophy is nothing but noisy chatter. Our Egyptian speech is more than talk. Its utterances are replete with power. So he's pretty upset about the Greeks getting a hold of this. So the first book is the Prophecy of Hermes, and I think the beginning of it is quite neat. So I'll just read a little bit to you. Its pure philosophy is spiritual striving to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God. But speaking now in prophecy, I say that in times to come, no one will pursue philosophy with single-mindedness and purity of heart. Those with a grudging and ungenerous temperament will try and prevent men discovering the priceless gift of immortality. Philosophy will become confused, making it hard to comprehend. It will be corrupted by spurious speculation. It will be entangled with bewildering sciences like arithmetic, music, and geometry. That's pretty intense when you first glance at that. Something I've focused on in my Let's Talk About videos are things that are still happening today. And as I discussed in another video, I believe that's the general thrust of philosophy. Human issues that will never be resolved. And they just can't be, because it is something that is structured internally that we will just never, I don't believe we will ever escape. Let's go over here to the Initiation of Hermes. When I read this, I was very, I shouldn't say startled, but my can't even read today. My senses were suspended in mystic sleep, not a weary, full-fed drowsiness, but an alert and conscious emptiness. Released from my body, I flew with my thoughts, and while I soared, it seemed to me a vast and boundless being called my name. Hermes, what are you looking for? To me, this is the first reference in the book of something akin to, I guess you could say, transcendental meditation. Am I allowed to use that term? Am I going to get a copyright strike or something for that? I don't know. But basically, when you have mastered the concept of meditation, your body, as you're completely relaxed and completely aware, you can throw your brain into REM and witness essentially a laser light show of lots of really fun stuff. Hermetica talks a lot about one of the simplest pleasures is bathing your mind in primal light. And to me, that sounds similar to hypnagogia. Referencing Terence McKenna again, twisting ribbons and dancing candies within your vision right before you fall asleep. But you can stay awake through that, and you can witness some really cool things. You can see geometric patterns, you can see crystal castles, geometric landscapes, all sorts of stuff. Very interesting. And when I started to read this, I was wondering, and this is how it hit me, was this a text on basically washing your spirit through meditation? I don't know. Maybe you should read it and find out too. So, going clearly referencing me just saying maybe you should read it. This is right at the end of the Initiation of Hermes, where he says, "So listen, men of clay. If you do not pay keen attention, my words will fly past you and wing their way back to the source from which they come." Which tells me there's a deeper meaning to this. It's not necessarily just a creationist text or a flat philosophical text. It has some potentially deeper meaning, maybe something working on a subconscious level. The circle of time is another part that I thought was interesting. In a sense, the cosmos is changeless. Because its motions are determined by unalterable laws which cause it to revolve eternally without beginning and end, its parts manifest, disappear, and created anew again and again in the undulating pulse of time. Through the process of time, life within the cosmos is regulated and maintained. Time renews all things in the cosmos by the circling process of change, measured by the heavenly bodies returning to their former positions as they revolve around the heaven. The present issues from the past, and the future from the present. Everything is made one by this continuity. Time is like a circle, where all the points are so linked that you cannot say where it begins or ends, for all points both precede and follow one another forever. The endless cycle of human torment in the human condition that people of antiquity recognize this. They were able to, a lot of people poo-poo the idea of spiritual texts. They didn't know anything of science. Of course they did. Of course they did. You have things like Göbekli Tepe, where the monolith in Turkey that was discovered, and I think they've only uncovered maybe, what was the estimate, 2 or 3% of this vast area in the Potbelly Hills was uncovered. And this is supposed to be in the hunter-gatherer phase, and there are reliefs of the solar system and constellations. It's incredible what we don't know of human history, but then at the same time, what we're told by the experts on the subject that, no, they weren't. They kind of poo-poo you. There's a reference, a section on the gods, so to speak. The mind of the cosmos created from fire and air, the 7 administrators who regulate destiny, the 5 visible planets, and the sun and moon whose orbits encompass the world of the senses. These celestial powers, known by thoughts alone, are called the gods, and they preside over the world. They are ruled over by the goddess Destiny, who transforms everything according to the law of natural growth, creating from the permanent, unchanging reality a permanently changing world. It's incredible to me. Maybe I was just sheltered as a kid, and I didn't get to read any of this fun stuff. But this stuff is just so incredible to me, that there was this internal spiritual battle. Internal spiritual battles, of course, internal spiritual battles have been going on forever. But thinking about Hermeticism at the time of early Christianity, Gnosticism, Pythagoreanism, all of that, and all of them vying for essentially dominance, and the ones that faded away into nothingness. There's another part in this book where Hermes talks about, he sees Egypt ready to fall. He sees it ready to go because of the rise of Christianity. I shouldn't say he foresaw the rise of Christianity. I mean, who couldn't? But he was very adept at being able to pick up on these. As I said, if he was indeed an individual, on these cultural flows and the changing of attitudes with people. The hierarchy of creation. Atum creates the cosmic mind creates the cosmos creates time creates change. But this is another book similar to my Oxford World Classics on Diogenes. I can pick up any of my Corpus Hermeticum books, flip to one of the books or one of the passages and just read it, and either be calmed or laugh out loud. Very, very excellent, very excellent texts. The birth of human culture. Humanity looked in awe upon the beauty and everlasting duration of creation, the exquisite sky flooded with sunlight, the majesty of the dark night, lit by celestial torches, as the holy planetary powers trace their paths in the heavens in fixed and steady meter. I was reading this light right here. I got this little light right here. And I thought it said Mary. I was like, that's not right. Ordering the growth of things with their secret infusions. It's a very beautiful way to describe the stars and the planets moving and the zodiac. Man is a marvel. At the risk of sounding like a complete and total weakling, when I read Man is a Marvel, by the end of it, I shed a tear. I don't want to read much of it, as I haven't with any of this. But check it. Man may know himself, and so know the cosmos by being aware that he is an image of Atum and of the cosmos. He differs from other things in that he possesses mind. Through mind, he may commune with the cosmos, which is the second God, and by thought, he may come to knowledge of Atum, the one God. The human body encloses pure mind, as if within a walled garden, which shelters and secludes it, so that it may live in peace. Let's see here. What else do we have? There's parts that I have marked. I'm like, I shouldn't read that. Let someone else read it. It's very impactful when you read it for yourself for the first time. I went into this, as always, with everything I do, I went in completely blind. The universal and the particular is quite incredible. Every living thing has its own unique form given to it by the power of the zodiac. This form is appropriate to its species, yet each is individual. The human race, for example, shares a common universal form by which we know that a man is a man, yet all human beings have distinctly different particular form, of which no two are entirely alike. There's probably someone out there watching this going, duh! Well, it's real to me. Incarnation of the soul. I mentioned earlier about how part of this philosophy is armoring your spirit. This was the first time I believe I ever read the physical description of a soul. The soul, which is spiritual, has its own wrappings, which are also spiritual. They are coats made of air. When such coats are thin and transparent, the soul is intelligent. When they are dense and muddied, like the air in stormy weather, the soul cannot see far, but it is only aware of its immediate predicament. Let's see. Yeah, ignorance of the soul. It's talking, or I believe it's talking about separation of spirit and physical husk. Tear off this cloak of shadows, this web of ignorance, these shackles of decay, this living death, this conscious corpse, this portable tomb, this robber in the house, this enemy that hates all that you love, this garment that smothers you and holds you down. Ignorance floods the land, its currents sweep you away. Don't be borne downstream. Make use of the backflow. Seek the safe haven of liberation. Anchor there and find a guide to lead you to the house of knowledge. There you will see with the heart the brilliant brightness. Really recommend Corpus Hermeticum. whether it's the Tim Frick, Peter Gandy version, Way of Hermes. There's other ones. There's the not Gnostic, the Hermetic collection. I know they sell. I think on Amazon, it's one of the ones that they'll print for you. But I'd be telling a big fib if I didn't admit that when I read the Hermetica, I didn't look at life differently. I didn't perceive things in a different light. I was raised in a Christian household, in a very very excellent family, and very I guess you would say liberal Christian family. But it wasn't like no rock and roll. Yeah, it was nothing like that. But you are raised with something familiar to you, and then later in life you come across something that it's not that it didn't erase my previous belief structure or anything like that. In fact, if anything, it strengthened my faith and spirituality. And also having a kid will do that too. I don't really pump that up. But definitely check out the Hermetica. Corpus Hermeticum. I think you'll dig it. It's considered esoteric, occult. But it's really cool. It's really cool. It's if you can't get over the concepts of monotheism or pantheons or gods, like stories of gods and stuff, then I don't know, maybe it won't be for you. But for other people who want to learn a little bit more about spiritual philosophy, and people who appreciate being fed not necessarily through something that they were raised with. And that's what it did for me. Sorry if I put too much of my own interpretation on what is within this. I wouldn't want to paint someone else's perception of what they should be reading. I don't want them to read it and be like, oh yeah, that guy's totally right. That's what he meant. That's what Hermes Trismegistus meant. Just like that guy said on YouTube. Read it yourself. It's very important. It's very important for people to experience things for themselves and do their own research. That's huge. Do your own research on these things. Don't it's one of those, don't trust me. Do your own research. It's very important. You might not just learn something about yourself, you might learn something about others. But the time has come. We were open before, but now we're closed. Beat it.